Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Snell-Cook of Cook Consulting Solutions, and I'll be moderating the webinar today, Trends in Credit Union Data Management. So just a few housekeeping items. Our aim is to make this event as informative and interactive as possible. We'll be asking lots of polling questions throughout the event, so please be sure to share your thoughts on those items. We'd love to hear from you. You'll also notice a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We want to encourage that you ask questions early and often to ensure that you get all the information that you want and need. So please, take advantage of our expert panel we have today. So with that, let's put up poll question number 1. And the question is, what core system does your credit union use? We've listed Fiserv, Jack Henry, or Scimitar, Correlation, CU Prodigy, CU Answers. Please answer that poll question as I continue introducing our esteemed panel of experts. First, we have Alex Munro. He is the Vice President of IT Operations at Wescom Credit Union in Anaheim, California. He has extensive experience and demonstrated track record for delivering growth and transformative technologies. The way Alex likes to run IT is like a business of its own to deliver reliable, scalable, and secure information technology solutions. His background includes significant information security, financial services, and infrastructure accomplishments for startups on through Fortune 500 companies. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
And next we have Dave Cerwinski. Dave is the president of WRG and joined in 2006. Later, he started as director of sales and marketing, later assumed greater responsibilities and became president in July of 2019. Dave is passionate about optimizing WRG, that's Wescom Resources Group, to make it the best service provider it can be. Prior to WRG, he served in various sales and marketing roles in the telecommunications industry. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you. And next, we have Andy Tripp, who currently serves as a Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at TTCU. At TTCU, he oversees information technology, payment services, digital, and the contact center. So welcome, Andy. Great information I'm sure you have to share. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
And last but not least, we have Kerry, Schiappa, who is the Director of Sales and Marketing for Wescom Resources Group. And she has served in the information technology industry for more than 25 years. Her career at Wescom Resources Group began in 2008. And prior to joining WRG, Kerry held sales positions managing Fortune 100 national and regional clients in companies such as AT&T and Lucent Technologies. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Sarah. Glad to be here.
All righty, thank you. And let's go ahead and close those that poll question. Okay, we've got some Correlation and Scimitar clients. Very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Alex and Dave to kind of touch on the poll results and then move into their presentation.
All right, great. Thank you, Sarah. Well, let's go ahead and advance that slide, Sarah, and we'll go to the first trend and look forward to digging in with some of these trends that we're seeing. And we'll be sharing some thoughts. Looks like we're getting that move forward there.
There we go. Sorry, there we go.
So the first trend is the emergence of hybrid cloud environments. We hear this phrase cloud almost constantly. And what's clear is that it's not a binary decision for your organization. It's not that you either go with cloud or not go with cloud. By far, the much more likely scenario is that you would have what would be called a hybrid cloud or perhaps a multi-cloud environment. Now, some industries are ahead of the credit union space in this regard. But credit unions are definitely moving forward and beginning to move forward quickly on this. I think COVID-19 has advanced that adoption rate. And when you think about it, for all the places that we as credit unions have our data stored, we're actually an ideal use case for the use of hybrid cloud. But to talk about this trend in more depth, I'd love to kick this over to Alex. And Alex, would love to have you unpack some of this in terms of telling us a little bit about this diagram and what you see about the implications of this sort of a model for credit unions.
Sure. Thank you, Dave, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, so essentially, most credit unions, mid-size, small, and even large, are definitely in probably the hybrid cloud camp. And when you think of public cloud, which I'll start with, you often think of things like Office 365, maybe AWS, maybe Azure. Maybe you're putting servers out there, because you don't have the physical infrastructure, or you don't have the data centers, you don't have the availability, but you just want to run your servers in an OpEx model in a public cloud environment. When you get into the credit union space, typically, and this is where WRG and kind of Wescom come in, you typically want what's called more of a private cloud or an enterprise cloud. And essentially what this is, it's a purpose-built, typically more tuned to credit or credit union or banking environments. And what it is you're still getting dedicated or shared tenant hardware, but you're getting your own instance in your own location. You know where your data is, you know who's supporting your applications. And in the case of our poll question, pretty much everybody on this call is a Scimitar and correlation client. And WRG actually happens to host both. And we do that out of our Wescom WRG data centers, the main one being in Anaheim, California, and another one out of state being in Phoenix, Arizona at a high-end co-location facility. But essentially you get the advantage of sort of having cloud-like advantages, meaning you're not buying hardware and you're not having to support a lot of hardware, patch it, etc. But you're getting to run your applications, particularly in the case of Scimitar and correlation. They require typically some proprietary type hardware and special configurations to make sure you're getting the performance and the needs that you need for your credit union. But from this diagram, you can see we bring all that back into your environment, your network, your branches, and your users. So really, it looks like it's on-prem for you, but it's really something that you're able to offer directly to your clients. So we can answer more in questions, but that's kind of a high-level overview of private versus enterprise versus public cloud technologies.
Okay, yeah, very good. Thanks, Alex. And yeah, I think there might be a poll question that came in on this pertaining to, I see in the notes here, where and when would we use each? Is that something we should discuss at this point, Sarah, or should we defer that to the Q&A later?
Yeah, why don't we hold that off to the Q&A, because I know Alex is on a roll here.
Okay.
Andy has some insight in this too, because Andy from TTCU can talk about his decision process, and then I can talk about Wescom's and how we host.
Okay, well, great. Well, then, in the meantime, let's talk about the second trend, which is the increased volume and sophistication of cyber attacks. The headline, which we've all heard about quite a bit in the news recently, was the Colonial Pipeline incident. And we're talking about a company that is over $1 billion a year in income. And can you imagine being the CEO in that situation where you have to make a decision to basically pay the bad guys? Which goes to show that even large organizations are not immune to the threats in this regard. And again, this is an area where, as credit unions, I think that we have a large target on our backs. 2 weeks ago, there was a New Jersey bank that was attacked by a group called Avedon. Now, mysteriously, midway through the attack, the attackers decided to back off, and then they sent the keys back and sort of just abandoned their operation and moved onward, maybe because they thought they were going to get caught. But that just goes to show that financial institutions definitely can come under this threat. So this is an area that we see within Wescom and WRG, a need for us to put up our walls even higher. And so for that, I know this is an area, Alex, where you have a lot of expertise and work in terms of putting up some of those barriers with respect to that. So maybe you can tell us about that. And I think we have another slide that sort of illustrates some of that. So Kerry, if you can advance the slide and Alex can speak to it.
Sure. So thank you again, Dave. And yeah, unfortunately, ransomware is probably topic number one all the way up to the President of the United States, particularly with the shift in targeting infrastructure, critical infrastructure. But financial institutions are certainly not immune from the latest types of attacks that are going on. I put in here kind of just again some high level thinking points. I know we have a range of technical people and up to business people on the phone, but really there's several key areas that you need to focus on when dealing with ransomware. Number one, obviously, is prevention. This is everything from phishing training to making sure you're patched completely, to making sure your public persona and your public facing systems, as well as your VPN networks, remote access, et cetera, are as secure as they can be. Unfortunately, that's usually not good enough, as we're finding out for a lot of companies. And so your next step there is detection. So there are software out there, I'm not going to name specific vendors, but they can actually detect what's called rate of change in databases and systems. So if you start to have an encryption event, particularly if it's after hours or weekends when a lot of these malicious activities happen, you actually get alarm bells going off either through your managed security provider, your internal NOC, or your systems that essentially tell you, for whatever reason, we have a large rate of change going on. And we ourselves actually see this during database refreshes or sometimes during deployments. Luckily, they've been false alarms at our company, but you want to have that detection capabilities in place. The third is mitigation. That's huge. As soon as you detect a ransomware event, you've got to get those systems off the network. You've got to stop the spread. You've got to contain the outbreak and limit your damage so that you can hopefully mitigate the impacts to your business. And again, that's what happens in these bigger companies. They really didn't know the extent of their impact. So they took the drastic case in the pipeline example. They actually shut down the gas supply. And I was on the East Coast on vacation for my son's graduation, and I too was impacted on a family card trip by that. But after mitigation, your next step shifts to recovery. And I didn't put it in here, but it is good to have cybersecurity insurance. It is good to bring in professionals if you do have an event. But number one, you're going to want to obviously assemble your incident response team. You're going to want advisors from your board, legal, all of that to kind of make decisions. But from an IT perspective, you're going to focus on recovery. How do you get your core systems back up? How do you get your key systems back up for your members and customers, whether it's your ATM network, your cash transaction systems, your websites, et cetera? How do you restore those core transaction systems and get them back online for your members? And then the last but not least is obviously returning to business as usual, which is BAU. And that's getting back to normal. The one piece I want to talk about the right side here, and not spend a lot of time on that, is there's this concept: backups are not good enough any longer. Typically, these ransomware teams are very sophisticated. They get into your network and then they actually go look for your backups. And if they're really smart, they encrypt and brick all your systems, and then they also delete your backups. And at that point, you're in real deep trouble because you can't just restore from backup. And so there's this concept called immutable copies, offsite backup, or air-gapped backups, or copies of your backups. And those are actually locked and they cannot be deleted. They should have multi-factor access. It shouldn't be the same admins, but essentially you want those immutable copies of your key systems to be non-tamperable, and you want to be able to keep them intact. So if you do make the decision not to pay, which some people do, some people don't for different reasons, you do have a recovery method with good data that at least gets you back to your previous nights, your previous days backups. And so that's really the purpose of this slide here. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I won't go into more detail, but essentially ransomware is a problem, and the financial services industry is a target. And there's everything going on from credential stuffing right now to out and out phishing to out and out backdoor hacks, et cetera. And it is a real threat to the industry. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kerry to advance the slide, but ransomware is probably here to stay for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So the last one that we had talked about, we wanted to share and discuss today is this third trend, the move from physical circuits to a virtualized network infrastructure. And I think this is another one where the COVID impact has probably accelerated things, because we've seen an increasingly distributed workforce in terms of team members, as well as distributed systems and applications. And in this environment, the old models of having one dedicated T1 or MPLS circuit to your primary and a VPN backup, that model may no longer be the optimum solution for an organization. And some of the selling points, if you will, of using said dedicated circuit and VPN backup, selling points being security, reliability, dedication of the resources, even those, the purported advantage of those doesn't exactly always spell out when compared to alternatives such as SD-WAN. And so that's an area that we'd like to dig deeper into. WRG has a business partner that specializes in SD-WAN deployments that we have some clients now beginning to work with us in that direction. But for today's discussion, would love to have you, Alex, sort of unpack some of that for us as well, and how an organization might consider the process of a move from, call it legacy networks, over to SD-WAN.
Sure. And I won't spend a lot of time on this. We'll stay on the same slide, but essentially SD-WAN is software-defined wide area networking. It essentially is overlaying onto either what are called public broadband circuits, which is commercial broadband, and or private line circuits, which could be point-to-point. They have DSL in here. There's not a lot of DSL anymore, but MPLS or other types of technologies. And essentially using software controllers to load balance and to send packets where they need to go, when they need to go in a secure fashion. The beauty of SD-WAN is it saves you money and it increases your bandwidth. So for a lot of credit unions, and Wescom's a great example, we have about 25 branches. We had about 5 megs to 10 megs per branch. And when somebody came in for a real estate loan doc, and that was 100 pages of PDF files, it could take 10 minutes for that person to download and print that so they could sign it, all while the member's standing in front of them. And not only that, they would impact the rest of the network while they were doing that. So we went out and we replaced the entire network with software-defined wide area networking. Essentially what we did is put in commercial broadband circuits, which is an internet connection, just like your home cable router, 100 megs to 300 megs per branch. And then we kept a 10 meg MPLS circuit from a carrier, national carrier, and we have a MPLS network that supports all the branches. But then we put SD-WAN controllers, 2 at every branch for redundancy, and a bunch of head-end ones at our primary data center and our DR data center. And essentially what we have now is a fully resilient, very cost-effective network that has about 4 to 10 times the bandwidth we had previously, and they're saving the credit union on the order of about $250,000 a year. So these are decent-sized numbers, again, depending on your size. But from a technology standpoint and a capability standpoint, it now lets our members do everything they need to do, our employees, to serve members much more quickly. Most of you have video cameras, security cameras, other things in branches. There's all types of high bandwidth traffic going on, like Zoom meetings and video now. Everybody expects real-time voice and video, and you really want your network to be able to handle all of this. And SD-WAN really has come of age, and it is a great technology. And Dave mentioned it, but WRG offers the ability to clients to send them SD-WAN controllers into our data centers if we're hosting their core systems, and make it part of their branch network or their wide area network that they then can distribute out to their branches and main facilities. So with that, I'll tie it up on SD-WAN, and we can move on to the next section of our presentation.
Yeah, so before we move on to Andy's great information, I want to put up a second poll question for you all. Are you considering changing core processors? And the response options are no, maybe in less than 5 years, maybe in 5 to 10 years, 10 plus years, or you're just not sure. I know this is kind of a popular subject among credit union executives as we try to move toward digital transformation. So while you all are voting on that one, I want to go ahead and let Andy review the results, if we could pull those up. There we go. Okay, no and not sure. So Andy, with that, if you want to comment a little bit on the poll results and then get going with your presentation. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. I was thinking there should be another answer as an option. It could be after I retire. I've seen that. Having just been through a conversion, that would now be my answer. So, but in all seriousness, TTCU, we are shifting our IT resources from a keep the lights on mentality to partnering with the business to advance our strategic initiatives, ultimately driving our organization's digital transformation. So we converted to a modern core last Columbus Day. We ran into a lot of that conversation where we're hampered by what the core can't do, and we didn't want technology to be an excuse. So if you're answering those questions, one thing you need to do is not be hampered by your technology. So as a part of our core change, we look for a strategic long-term partner to help us run the core. We did find a trusted partner in WRG. They run the day-to-day operations of our core system more efficiently and effective than we can, even for our size organization. Core hosting is one of their core competencies, not ours. We think of them as an extension of our staff. Not only do they have the technical expertise, but they have the industry expertise, credit union specific knowledge. To me, that gives them a competitive advantage over any other partner we look at. They were with us from the start of our project in every weekly call and at go live. I can't say enough good things about that project in WRG. And as a result of moving our core system to WRG, our uptime increased, our backup and failover capabilities, they've increased, our security around the core has increased, department morale went up, and then we're also able to recapture and reallocate 3 hours per day in IT, moving again from that keep the lights on to helping further the business and those initiatives. During the conversion, we also partnered with WRG to implement their Telergy solution in our branches. We have the old black and white signature pads most other financial institutions have. Our member expectations are driven by other industries and other experiences. Other retail stores have up-to-date, full-color point-of-sale signature capture systems. Telergy allowed us to match our member expectations and then provide other benefits as well, marketing, privacy. So as TTCU looks to other strategic technology investments, we're fortunate to have a partner like WRG, and we'll look at them first as an option or to bounce ideas off of. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. The WRG really functions as a true business partner for credit unions. So with that, I will put up our final poll question, question number 3, and that is, there we go. Have you ever considered outsourced hosting and managed services? Yes, no, but you're curious and want to learn more, or no? So if you can just respond to that for us while Kerry gets rolling.
I appreciate everyone joining here today. A little bit about WRG. We are a technology QSO wholly owned by Wescom Credit Union located in Southern California. QSO was founded in 2002. So we've got core hosting clients ranging from 54 million in assets to about 2.5 billion in assets. So we serve any size credit union. Now we'll talk about our growth. We've had continuous growth in core hosting, and you can see that from 2015, the AUM stands for assets under management. So we've gone to about almost 3 billion up to 16.4 billion in assets managed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about core managed services and some of the things that you might want to consider when you're looking at outsourcing. Members are the focus of every credit union, and serving them well really requires a lot of dedicated infrastructure, but it also requires significant staffing resources. Starting off with computer operations, this is where WRG can do all or part of your job processing. So daily, month-end, annual IRS reporting. On the server administration and management, our team is responsible for hardware and for software upgrades, patches, dispatching, taking care of all the dedicated infrastructure requirements and supporting core hosting. From an information security and risk management standpoint, Dave and Alex really made some important points about risks associated with cyber attacks, like the Colonial Pipeline ransomware. And WRG employs extensive DDoS detection and protection policies. We conduct penetration testing, ransomware protection. We really follow security best practices. From an operations and testing standpoint, WRG coordinates an annual disaster recovery failover, simulation, and testing. And we coordinate that with each individual client. We are responsible for third-party connection setup and testing. We perform uptime monitoring, and including network and systems, all done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in the area of compliance, WRG participates in a biannual SSAE 18 SOC 1 Level 2 audit, as well as QSO audits. Our flexibility as it relates not only to the configuration options, but to the way that you work with our team. We don't box you into our own specific offer. We like to be real flexible on how we can support each client. And then collaboration with the right partners, allowing you to really drive your strategic planning and keep a focus on member engagement can add services and support to your organization. Sarah, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Yes, so just want to give you all a reminder, we do have a Q&A chat function in your panel at the bottom. And Kerry, can you advance to the next slide?
Yeah.
So that you may ask questions live here of our panelists. Here is one that Dave alluded to earlier. So Andy and Alex, you both run tech for some large credit unions. Could you or have you done this in-house, and what's the key difference you see?
Andy, do you want to start? Because we're Wescom's in-house and a hoster, so I'll let you talk, and then I'll talk about how we do it.
Sure. And this question is around the hybrid cloud, correct? Just make sure. Okay. So we have started down the cloud journey. Of course, like most others, we started with software as a service, moving into what I would consider platform as a service. We have not yet got into the infrastructure as a service where you're hosting, Windows servers. And I guess that goes back to the same reason we chose WRG as a partner. The expertise to learn that is very narrow and very complex. And there's other partners that can do it better and more efficiently than we can. So when we get to that point, we will look to partners such as WRG for that expertise when we look at the cloud environment, hybrid environment specifically.
Yeah, and I'll comment a little bit. So Wescom, from a Wescom perspective, Wescom we host our own systems. Obviously, we have that core competency because we host it for 40 plus other credit unions. So we run a bunch of Scimitar instances and a bunch of correlation instances. But things that we use the hybrid cloud for, obviously we've got SaaS apps like Workday, Kronos, Salesforce, and then we have just started to embark on Office 365. We're looking at some data warehousing projects in Amazon. We're actually also looking at Amazon Connect for contact center, potentially outsourcing. So again, it really depends on what the crown jewels are, kind of what you want to keep close in-house. Do you have the staff to support and run that? And then what do you want to outsource, out to either public, private or hybrid clouds? So that's kind of how we make that decision process. And obviously cost is part of that decision. It's capital versus OpEx, and it's kind of your talent levels and staffing levels and core competencies that play into those decisions.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. And one more question that's come in. Alex and Dave, you were discussing the hybrid cloud environment, and you talked a little bit, Alex, about when, where, and why you use each. Can you go in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit biased in the sense that we obviously would love credit unions, particularly that have Keystone or Scimitar systems, to come to us for their, what I'm going to call their private cloud. So it's really an enterprise private cloud, but we give each of those clients a dedicated space, a dedicated team. Well, not a dedicated team, we use shared services teams, But we give them networking, we give them security, we run batch jobs, we do the new releases, we do patch management, we do all of those things about the care and feeding of those systems, both for the Scimitar Jack Henry product as well as the Correlation Keystone product. And we're very good at both. I can't say enough about my computer operations manager, gentleman by the name of Tommy Trong, who's fairly well known, particularly among our clients, and they really seem to enjoy working with him and his 24/7 staff, which is there 365 days a year, always ready to answer the phone and help out any credit union. And they plan out DR tests. They do essentially anything that their customers need. Back to the hybrid cloud, I mentioned some things earlier, but obviously we're pushing out some applications to cloud-based that aren't core to us, and that's going fairly well. And again, you can buy a lot these days that you don't have to be an expert and build it in-house. You really want to focus on what's member differentiating and what makes a difference for your particular credit union. We keep certain things in-house, credit card apps, online and mobile apps. We have our own software development team. Again, we're a little bit bigger, so we can do some of that stuff in-house, but then we push out things like financial applications, HR applications, Office 365 I mentioned. Those we choose not to build and support in-house just because there's not a lot of value there. So it's kind of how we approach that decision point.
Thanks so much. And with that, I would love for, I'm waiting to see if there are any more questions. No more questions. Kerry, we're going to, as a thank you to those attendees today, we want to send out a Wescom battery pack charger. Yep, there you go. So Kerry will be in touch with you about sending those out for those who attended today. We really appreciate you joining. I'm also going to put Kerry's email address in the chat. If you have any further questions, please reach out to any of our panelists through Kerry Schiappa at wescomresources.com, and her number there is 310-736-5121. Thank you to Alex, Dave, Andy, and Kerry today, and thank you to our attendees again. Have a great rest of your day.